So last year, Google Ghana awarded the university about $30,000 to do some work on artificial intelligence. Particularly, this was through me and some other collaborators. So since then, I've been trying to find ways to get engaged more with Google Ghana because Google has been here for about more than 10 years. Apparently, they've never been to this university before, so this is the first time for over 10 years. And to start a kind of discussion and collaboration process where we'll be able to learn what they are doing in Ghana, what are the projects they do in Ghana, how our students can participate in such space, and what are the knowledge we can share together. And so this is the main idea of this seminar. We are going to talk about some of the projects they do. What are the skill sets you need if you want to be part of such a project? What do you need in this as you are training and preparing yourself? You need to ask yourself, if I finish the university, do I have such requisite skills that I can be part of such projects ongoing, not just in Ghana, but all over Africa and all over the world? So this is the main essence of today's seminar, to kind of create an interaction between UCC and Google Ghana students, lecturers, or alike. We are lucky to have the Director of Research, Innovation and Consultancy for the university in the name of Professor David Doku. So he's going to give us a welcome speech before we start to progress to the rest of the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Warmly welcome. Kipos, I'm surprised to hear that this is your first time in the top university in Ghana. So we are delighted to have you. And good morning to you, students and colleagues. Yes, I know some of you are running away from classes to be here, and that is a good thing. So I'm very happy that we are here. This morning, as Steve has rightly said, we are gathered here to have a short seminar on exploring the future. I think this is a very well-packed title, exploring the future. What does the future hold for us? Those of us who are below the ages of 60 now, we have to be concerned about the future. Not to be worried, but to be excited about the future, what it holds for us in the face of all these digital evolutions and especially artificial intelligence. So I think this is a very appropriate time for us to engage and to discuss about the current trends in artificial intelligence. Not only in the mainstream areas where we've been thinking about, say, biomedical engineering or robotic engineering or these other mainstream areas, but in every facet of our lives, in medical care, in shopping, in the household chores, in higher education in particular, in transportation, in the geography, mapping, and what have you. How do we explore this technology in these areas in our everyday life, in agriculture, marketing, which every aspect of our life, how do we take advantage of it? So I think this is a very appropriate seminar. And later yesterday evening when Steve dropped me the WhatsApp, I was thinking we could try and organize this on a bit more larger scale so that the university community can benefit. Interestingly, the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Consultancy this year, our proposed theme for our annual Research and Grants Award ceremony is the role of artificial intelligence in higher education opportunities and challenges. So we are looking forward to exploring that And probably we should liaise with Google for that event is scheduled for November this year. So we see how we can partner in this area. For us at DRIP, as the name implies, the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Consultancy. And I think artificial intelligence is one of the great innovations that has come. If I look at some 25 years ago when I was sitting as an undergraduate student, when I tell my niece that the mobile phones at the time didn't have well, internet in the first place, not to think about WhatsApp. Internet, you couldn't search for anything at the time. There was no mobile money. There was no Twitter. There was no Facebook. There was no YouTube. I remember 2005 when I traveled to London and I wanted a location. When you want a location, they will pick the map and say that this is where we are on the map. This is where you are going. So you have to take this and that and show you on the map. No, no map in your phone to check anything. Today we have everything in our palm. So it's a big change. You can't think, it's unthinkable when I speak with some other younger ones. It's unthinkable that those times when I was at K University, I couldn't call home to find out whether they are home, whether they should send me money through the bank and whatever. And just a few years before that, even if you are saving in bank A, you can only withdraw your money in bank A because your file and your every record is in bank A. So if you open your bank, for example, or a bank account, for example, at Dansuma, when you are in Cape Coast, you have to go to Dansuma to it's unthinkable that the world has changed so much. And so we have to explore the possibilities of using these innovations to help us. Of course, there are also challenges, but I believe that we can look at them in a positive way. Within every challenge, there are huge possibilities. Now, the educational sector, what we are actually concerned with, which we've been discussing on many platforms, is the application of artificial intelligence, especially the its application and ensuring that the students are able to think for themselves. They are able to present assignments by themselves. They are able to do some work that we can judge that this is really human intelligence, not artificial intelligence. And I have the view that probably it's the same way when the calculator, the simple calculator was invented. Probably people were thinking, how can we teach mathematics? Now every student can just point. You can't really understand whether they really understand what we are teaching them because they will just ask the calculator and the calculator will give them the answer. But we know that over the period of time, we know that is not the case. So I believe the future is bright. I believe the future is exciting. I believe the future is ours. Now, the future is ours. And so we need to begin to explore how we can utilize artificial intelligence in every aspect of our life. As I said, healthcare, transportation, medicine, agriculture, household, chores, marketing, education. We should be able to do that. So I'll, on behalf of the Vice Chancellor and the University of Cape Coast, warmly welcome you to the University of Cape Coast, the University of Competitive Choice. And we are looking forward to partnering with you. We hope this will be an opportunity for greater collaboration in the future in many other ways. So we want to assure you that we are in for you. We are ready for you to explore what we can do together to move our nation forward. As you can see by the presentation here, and we know in Africa, the population is very useful. Youthful population, a youthful population that do not fear ICT things, and it means that there is an opportunity for us to explore the ICT tools to be able to take advantage of what the demographics or the population dividends, the dividends that comes because our population is so useful, and then we have so little people to take care of the future. So I think the future is ours, and I want to say that I wish you a very pleasant seminar. Unfortunately, I'm coordinating one school that is ending today. So from here, I'll sit for a while and I'll ask for a leave and join you. I'm sure Steve is in control. If we close, we are ending around 2 o'clock, but that time you are still here, I'll pass through. But I want to wish you a very pleasant seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. So we'll go straight. I'll let Jason start. Jason is the head of Google Ghana, and he will talk about Google Ghana and Africa in general.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. We're pleased to be here and see all of you at the #1 university in West Africa. Thank you for inviting us here so that we could present some of the work that we do and get to know you and kind of describe the process of how we do research. I'd love to give kind of an intro to our office in Accra. This is the terrace at our office in Accra. Here's a few photos of the people in our office. This is a relatively new office. We have about 20 software engineers in the office. You can see multiple events. This is in our cafeteria. This is us bowling. Over on the right, you see us at Okosombo. Here's an example of Abigail on our panel at ICLR. I'll keep this close. And we have a young, dynamic group. The office itself, we began about 5 years ago in a small building in Accra. This is a Google research office, and by research, we mean that we're exploring ideas and innovation and creativity to come up with topics that are relevant for Africa. So this office is in Africa, for Africa. We started in this small building about 5 years ago. This is our initial workshop. I'll talk about a couple of the projects that we've been doing in the office around mapping open buildings, food security, and weather. And over this period of 5 years, we've moved to a new office in central Accra, and the team has grown significantly. So just as an introduction, I'd like to cover a couple of our research areas so you get an idea of what we're looking at. I'm not going to cover everything, but I'll just cover 2 things. Oh, and here's a map of areas that we're interested in. So all of our focus, all of the topics that we work on revolve around artificial intelligence. Every single thing that we do is to use the application of artificial intelligence to do something in a novel way. We're focused on Africa. I'll talk a bit about the Open Buildings Project. One of the projects that I work on is weather forecasting. In general, we're focused on food security, African languages, crises, and so forth. So let's look at one of the projects that we've been working on called Open Buildings. Here's our team of about 6 to 8 engineers. And the idea here is that throughout most of Africa, we actually don't have a good understanding of where the buildings are, the built structures. So that includes both established structures in urban areas and also rural areas. But we have satellite imagery. And so the thought is that we can use high-resolution satellite imagery and artificial intelligence methods to recognize where the buildings are and place them on the map. So this is fairly challenging. If you look at this area in South Africa, these buildings over here are fairly large and pretty easy to recognize. these buildings on the left are much more disorganized, much smaller, and it's difficult for algorithms to spot them. So we've been focused on developing artificial methods to produce very high accuracy maps of these buildings. And it works something like this. So here's an area with a set of buildings in it. Our goal is to produce segmentation masks. So we train models. We go in and we have people take some examples of images like this and label the maps or label the buildings by hand. Then we use those to train artificial intelligence models to recognize where the buildings are. Those models then produce a segmentation mask that looks like this, where we have boxes over all the areas where there are buildings, and then this is just a colored image showing where the different buildings are. So this is a very large-scale problem. So at this point, we've been working on this project for about 3 years, and we've initially focused on Africa, and currently we've expanded that. So about a year ago, we had mapped all the buildings in Africa, and we've expanded that further to the global south to include India, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. And two things come into play here. One is that this is very large-scale artificial intelligence, and it's the development of sophisticated models for recognizing environmental features. So that's the kind of research that we do in this office. So we have enormous resources at our disposal. We want to use them in a way that makes a difference. Once we have these buildings, here's another example that MohamedElfatih works on. Once we have a map of the buildings, we can use this for multiple purposes. We can use it, well, population centers tend to cluster around buildings, so we can tell where people are living. But also, we can use this kind of imagery to determine where damage has occurred. So if there's a wildfire or a flood or an earthquake, then we would like to know who was affected, which buildings were affected. So we can use satellite imagery, say, to take a map before the crisis occurred and another map after the crisis occurred, and use this imagery, use models or train models to detect where damage has occurred on that map. So here's an example where on the left-hand side, we have the images before, and then after I think this might be an earthquake, after the event has occurred, we have new imagery, and we can develop models then to show where damage has occurred. So this is a case where we have a lot of damage. Here's another case where there was very little damage. And once we know that, then we can send support to those areas so that were affected by this crisis. Okay. Another thing that I'll just bring up is weather. Weather affects practically everything that we do. Okay, this is our weather team. Weather affects practically everything in life, including crises. So as I talked about, floods, extreme heat, and drought affect how we exist in the world. It has a major effect on agriculture, on when to plant, when to harvest, on pests and diseases and so forth. And we would like to develop methods for weather forecasting that are cheap and accurate. Now, for Africa, this is a challenge. So many other parts of the world, in the United States and Europe, there's existing weather infrastructure. It's run by the national governments. It's very expensive. They're very expensive weather forecasting models. With artificial intelligence, we can actually develop models that are very cheap to run, and we can apply them in other parts of the world that don't have this kind of infrastructure. However, currently, weather forecasts in Africa are quite inaccurate. There are no automated nowcasting systems. And the numerical methods, the traditional methods for weather forecasting don't work well in Africa because they've been tuned for areas like Europe and the United States that have a different kind of weather than we have here. And so what we're working on is developing weather forecasting models that are effective for Africa. And that again is based on satellite imagery. So we're using satellite images on the left we have images of where precipitation is occurring. There are also geosynchronous satellites that take satellite imagery. Oh, good, thank you. And we're using those to develop weather forecasting models, high resolution weather forecasting models for Africa. Okay, and we've applied these methods in parts of the world that have ground truth, that have weather infrastructure to demonstrate that they work, and we can produce very high quality weather forecasts that are very cheap to run. So normally for weather forecasting, you need a supercomputer center that has the computational power to produce forecasts, global forecasts. With artificial intelligence, in contrast, is very cheap. We can generate forecasts in less than a second using very comparatively rudimentary hardware. And so we can produce forecasts for Africa that are high accuracy and available to agencies for easy use. Okay, so our agenda today, we have a few talks. Jean-Michel is going to talk about artificial intelligence for languages more deeply. Lucy will talk about flood forecasting, and MohamedElfatih will talk about the interview process. So that was just a couple things that we've been working on. Of course, we're interested in languages. We're interested in agriculture in general, food security in general. So I'm happy to take any questions.
So, about your numerical example,
Yeah.
do you mean you are doing some discriminatory solving some PDEs?
We're not actually solving the PDEs. This is totally data-driven. So we learn the physics by example, right? Now there are methods that are hybrid methods where we're combining physics-driven PDE solvers with artificial intelligence methods as well. Yes?
Well, your presentation is mostly in relation to weather forecasting and maybe agricultural research.
Great.
For those of us who are in education, where's anything in relation to education?
Is there a relation with education, the weather forecasting? I'll just put that.
No, I mean, the application of AI in education as well as AI for weather forecasting.
Oh, absolutely. So I didn't talk about that. And we're not focused on that in the office in Accra. That's not one of our projects. But artificial intelligence has multiple applications. So we can create teachers that understand the material and interact with students. We can use that for grading. Of course, you also have the case where, as you know, for example, ChatGPT, you can ask it to write an essay for you for a course. So the question is, how do we use that effectively within education? So there are many applications to education. But as I said, in our office, we're not focused on that, but broadly at Google, we are. Other questions? Okay, good. Thank you.
Everyone, thank you, Amath, for being here. My name is Jean-Michel from Sarr. Before joining Google last September, I was a PhD student at Dube University in Senegal and Sorbonne University in France. And what I want to cover here is what I've been learning since I joined Google, and also what I've been learning as in my participation to HiClear 2023, which is one of the top tier conferences in AI, and I want to share with you what people are currently doing nowadays and what are the trends and where people spend resources. So I'm going to start with the three areas of AIs, so a little bit of historical background. then I'm going to move to why the current paradigm that we are using is related to how us human beings will learn. So a ground in neuroscience. And then I'm going to talk about like 3 trends, so using foundational model to generate new data. I'm going also to talk about multilinguality and about multimodal models. And finally, I'm going to give some general ML highlights. Right. So at the beginning, during the 90s and before, researchers used to extract features. So for instance, let's say that you are a researcher and you are interested in doing birds, like you want to categorize the singing of birds. So you are going to have like speech, and you are going to extract features manually, and then you are going to give your features to a machine learning model. So another simple example is like you have raw data in the nature, you want to classify them. So what people used to do, like in this case, where the data, it's hard to find a classifier which is a straight line. So what you would do is to just translate the data to a polar coordinate system, and then to have your classifier. So this is what people used to do at the time. In the 2010s, there is a group of researchers led by Jeff Hinton who developed the AlexNet architecture, which is here. And they were able to beat the state of the art in computer vision, in the ImageNet computer vision challenge. So ImageNet is a large data set of 1,000 images, of 1,000 classes, and about 1 million images. And with this architecture, a deep neural network architecture, they were able to beat the state of the art, but by a large margin. And so this event was the breakthrough in computer vision that led to a lot of researchers to spend more time and more resources in deep neural networks. Another architecture that was developed a few years later is the ResNet architecture. So no need to understand the specific of this architecture. The only principle that we should retain is depth. So what the researchers have discovered is that as you scale the depth of the neural networks, they get more accurate. And another capabilities that we have discovered is that researchers have discovered is that, so in this graph, with traditional machine learning method in green, if you have a lot of data, your method is not going to improve with the quantity of the data. But if you have a smaller neural network, it improves upon like the traditional ML, and the larger your model, the better the performance. So this is typically a kind of method, for instance, in weather forecasting. So the more data we have, the more we are able, and the bigger the model, the more we are able to increase our performance. So this is why this trend, the deep learning era has taken off. And so the first breakthrough came from computer vision, but the second breakthrough, and so this is the current trend in AI. So the past trend, it is still going on. There are still people publishing papers about deep learning, but so the challenge with traditional deep learning is that we need labeled data. So for instance, let's say that you want to teach a model to recognize birds, sorry. So you need to label the sound of the bird, and this manual process is costly, takes time, and so what researchers have been focusing on is to leverage unlabeled data. So data without any human label. And we can see that the space of unlabeled data is much bigger than the space of labeled data. So it came from NLP. You have the whole internet that is text, basically, text, images, etc. And so what people have been doing is to use a method called self-supervised learning. So self-supervised learning in NLP is you have a text and you want a model, an artificial intelligence model, to predict the next words. So what am I going to say next? So this is what the model tried to do. They tried to predict what the next word is going to be. And so this technique is very interesting because now we don't need label. You can take the whole internet and try to predict the next words. It allows us to extract information from the internet and from whatever data exists. So currently the paradigm of foundation model is that you take one of these large self-supervised model and adapt it. Can you hear me? Sure. We'll continue like this. Yeah, so basically you have a large foundation model and then you use it to adapt it to whatever task you are interested in. So for instance, someone is interested in education. You can take a large model to have a large understanding of the world, and then you are going to adapt it to your task of interest. Maybe your task of interest is answering questions to quizzes. So you are going to take a small set of quizzes and adapt your large model to it. So this is what people are doing. And some researchers have found what we call scaling laws. So scaling laws is a phenomenon that has been discovered. That as you scale the number of parameters, so the bigger your model, as you scale the amount of data, and as you scale the amount of compute available, the loss is going to decrease linearly. So there is an incentive to just scale data, the number of parameters, and compute. So I want to ground this in the current theory of perception in neuroscience. So I want to ask the audience, in your opinion, what direction does this lady turn in? So, yes, clockwise. Clockwise. Who sees clockwise? Can you raise your hands? Can you raise your hand, please? It's not enough. So some people see counterclockwise. Can you raise your hand, please? Okay, so I want to quote Amath, who is a neuroscientist at the University of Sussex. He says reality is a controlled hallucination, in the sense that the perception that we have is predicted by our brain. So the current theory of perception tells us that we have half of our reality is the data, so the raw data, the raw pixels, the raw noise, etc. And the other half is our brain predicting what's going next. For instance, let's say that you are walking in the street at night and you see a piece of wood. Maybe your brain is going to say, "Oh, it's a snake," and you change your direction. So this phenomenon is at the origin of self-supervised learning. So since we were children, our brain were constantly trying to predict what's going next. And currently we are also doing that. So if you plan something and it doesn't go according to plan, you feel bad. Like, oh, I plan to I don't know, take this bus at this time and the bus doesn't come. You feel a little bad, so you have a loss. So this is what researchers have been trying to leverage, like raw data. So now, okay, let's talk a little bit about how this paradigm is being used currently. So it's hard to see, but what people are doing now, so here you can see a problem puzzle, Python problem puzzle, where it's a simple equation, L plus S equal, in a word, what is S? So researchers have been generating 1 million artificial puzzles like that, and they have generated answers as well. And they have taken this data generated by a big large language model. They have used this data to fine-tune other smaller models. And so what they have discovered is that the quality of the data matters. So here is, for instance, the baseline evaluated on a test set. Here is the for a given model. So this baseline now, this base model has been fine-tuned, so adapted to a set of examples, but with unverified solution. So it's like you train a child, but you give them problem and good solution, but also problem with bad solution. And if you take only puzzles with the correct solution, so the gray line, you have a much higher performance. So what we observe is that it's better to use quality data if you want to fine-tune a model. Another thing that people notice
So this is a paper that was published in ICLR 2023. So another thing that people observe is that there is kind of a exponential decay in the amount of data used to fine-tune. So for instance, you have your baseline blue here. You have a model fine-tuned with 25,000 examples in orange, and a model fine-tuned with 1 million examples. So there is not a large difference. So it means that if you generate data from your big model, no need to generate a lot of data. You can generate just around maybe 20K. There's also a paper that was published recently titled "Less is More," and they were able to have a very good performance with only 1,000 examples. So it's better to target quality and a small set of examples. The last graph shows the effect of the model size. So if you fine-tune on bigger and bigger models, you are going to have better performance. So this is an example. So another example, I don't know if you can see it properly here. So in this first row, you have like boats. You have a boat, but if you pay attention, you are going to notice that the background changes from one image to the other. So these images were generated by diffusion models. Diffusion models are a set of models that can generate images, realistic images. And so what people are doing now, they are using new images to give a smaller model to train them. And so this is a data augmentation technique in the sense that we can keep the image as it is, keep the object, the main object, change the background, or have the background fixed and change the boat. As you can see here, the boat changes. And so what they showed in the paper is that, okay, if you take the green, so the green is the data augmentation they propose, and the orange is the data augmentation, like traditional data augmentation. So they show that they were better than previous data augmentation. So this is a use that people have with the foundation model. You can use it to generate data to train smaller models. So you don't need to train a big, large model. You can just use it to train a smaller model. So now I want to move to multilinguality. So something I haven't talked about is that this foundation model, they exhibit emergent capabilities. So it means capabilities that were not targeted at first. So some people are now thinking about consciousness. Can these models be conscious? So there are new questions that are being asked because we don't understand the capabilities they are developing. One of them is multilinguality. So basically what these researchers have done is that they have taken a set of 250 math questions and they translated them in 10 different languages. The questions were in English, but they translated them in high resources language like Japanese, Russian, Spanish, but also underrepresented language like Swahili or Bengali or Thai. And so, okay, what they did is, so the foundation model, the pre-trained model, has been trained with like 1% of these high resources language, almost 100% of English, and 0.01% of Swahili or Bengali. So a very small amount of these data. But so what they're showing is that if we look at so there are two things that we are going to look, is the circle and the group. Let's just focus on that. So for English, so the circle is that you take the question, you translate it back into English, and you ask the model to answer. So the model has been trained on 99% English. So your model knows how to reason in English and solve math problem in English. So if you translate it, if you take the question in Swahili and you translate it back in English, then the model is going to be able to perform it very easily. So this is what we can see here, for instance, or here for that. But then if you keep the question in Bengali, for instance, or in Swahili, there is just this gap of performance. So the model is going to lose around 9% of accuracy, but while having seen only a small fraction. So what we can extrapolate from this research is that even with the small amount of data, the model is able to take the reasoning capability that it has learned on high resource languages and then use it to understand and solve questions in a language that has very and so why does it work? So I like this matrix. This matrix is that so this is a research that was conducted by Meta, and what basically they have shown is that instead of before machine translation was we used English as a bridge, meaning that okay, let's say that so these are all the languages that we care about on the rows, and you have the same for the column. So let's say that you care about Tiwi and Gong. So I say two Ghanaian languages. Let's say that Tiwi is here, Ghan is here. So what you would do before? You would just find, you would translate a set of text that you have into English, and then so you try to find this cell, and you have a lot of corpus of data from Ghan to English, and then so you're just going to try to find Ghan here, and so this is what people used to do. But now what we have found is that no need to pass by English as a bridge. You can just go from, I don't know, if you were to this cell and you want to go to this cell, you can just go here if you have enough data in like the languages that are closer to your language. So now what people do is that they just collect vast amount of data and in whatever language, and it helps the model to be more multilingual. Another trend is multimodality. So multimodality is basically to combine images with speech or with text. So for instance, so this is a model that was published by Dube at Hickey in 2023. And so what they have done is that they have combined so it's a vision transformer. It's an encoder, so you have images that you feed into this. And this vision transformer is going to output features. And these features are going to be passed to a transformer along with some text. And then the model is able to answer questions about an image. So for instance, you can give an image, I don't know, maybe you are a medical doctor, you give an image, X-ray image, and you ask a question, where is the tumor? And then the model is going to say the tumor is there. So this is a capability that is unlocked by multimodality, the capability of reasoning with images. And so this is another paper that was also published by Google. It's now to combine speech, text, and multilinguality. So combining many emergent capabilities. So basically, let's say that you are interested in Tamil, or so this is the example that they have done. But let's say that it's your language. You can collect spoken language, spoken data in your language of interest. You can also collect text, maybe in your language that are not related. You have it in this big box, and then you take a group of data where you have a correspondence between speech and text, and then you are going to do self-supervised learning, so trying to predict what's going to happen next. And what this technique shows is that you can improve the performance by 20–30% on your language of interest. So it means you don't need label to improve performance. So this is very ongoing research. It has been published in 2023. People are very excited about this kind of capabilities. Okay, and another way combining modalities can be interesting. So here, normally there is a video, but you cannot see it here. But I can just give you the high-level idea. So if you combine text and image, you can unlock 3D. Meaning that let's say you have an image of a monkey or of a dog or of a tiger or whatever. You have a picture of it. If you train a diffusion model with some text, it's going to refine this prediction and say, oh, this is not Dalmatian, this is a hen, because his computed similarity between these features is going to be this, etc., etc. And then if you compute the average, is going to be greater than this. So it means we have taught the model more information about the objects. Instead of thinking only in terms of like one object, like for instance, dimension you have 10, it's going to add more features, more information around the object. So this is why. So this is another work that was published at Hickey actually, and so this is why multimodality works, because we are adding. Basically, an image is worth 1,000 words. So if you have an image and 1,000 words, then that's great. Okay, so I'm almost finished. So now some general machine learning highlights. So a current challenge that we have, that the people in the industry have, is that, okay, now we have this very, very large model. So when I say large model, for instance, these guys have trained GLM, a 130 billion parameter Chinese and English model. So these are researchers from China. And the thing is, how do you get to compress this model? Maybe you are interested in an application where, okay, where you want to deploy your model, you don't have access to the internet, so you want your model to be on device. So how do you like import all these capabilities on an edge device? So there are a couple of ways to do that. So what these guys have shown is that there is a quantization. They have shown a scaling law for quantization. So let's say that you train a model of 100 million parameter. Okay, you are going to have this performance. If you quantize it, so quantization means that, okay, if your model uses weight with a lot of detail, so it uses maybe 16-bit weight, you're going to reduce the weight. So you just remove unnecessary information. But as you do that, you lose information, and so you lose capabilities. So this is what they show. They have shown. So if you have a 100 million parameter model, if you quantize it, then you lose almost all information. But as you scale the size of your model, so if you go to 100 million parameters, then quantizing it doesn't lose any performance. So you can go from a model that's maybe I don't know, could be like many gigabyte on memory, and then you just divide it by a 10x factor. So this is a very promising technique that I want to share here. So this is another technique that was published by at Hickey 2023. So fine-tuning, so I spoke about a lot of terms without explaining them, but fine-tuning is basically you take a model that was pre-trained on like the whole internet or a very large data set, and then you just change the weight a little bit on your data set of interest. So what these guys have shown is that instead of, when you fine-tune, you update the weights of all the network. So what these guys have shown is that there is a preferential layer to adapt to your data sets. So meaning that, okay, if you're interested, if your target data is CypherC or entity 30 or ZFA, you're not going to fine-tune all the layers. You can fine-tune a specific layer that is going to give you maximum performance. So they call this technique surgical fine-tuning. So yeah, I found it very interesting. I want to share. All right, thank you very much. So yeah, if you have any questions. Yes, please.
Thank you. It's a concern. I can see the one behind the training of the system to be in control of whatever the system has said or must regard as valid or not. So here, how do we control the human influence in terms of subjective nature of individuals?
Yes, that's a very actual question, actually. So it is done during fine-tuning. So let's say that we are interested in language and in text more specifically. We want a model that that writes text. We want the model not to be biased. For instance, a typical example of bias is so there are many kinds of bias. And so what we want to do is to use a data set that is unbiased and to give it to the model and train them on it. It's like you have, so a way to think, a good way to think about these models is that the pre-trained model is like a 9 years old. So he's able to do a lot of stuff, and then you train it to be very proficient, fast in any domain, like medicine, or I don't know, you want it to be an expert in whatever. So you're going to take a specialized data set and train it on that. So it's like a curriculum, if you will. So you want your curriculum that you provide to the model fine-tuned to train it to be clean, to be free of bias, to be safe. But even this might not be enough, because since the model has been trained on the whole internet, we don't control like what it has seen. So you can add some patches on top of it to say, okay, because there are always smart people who try to outsmart the machine. We're going to ask the question, I'm not I don't know. They are pretending that they are not malicious, but indeed they are malicious. Oh, my neighbor has a very nice car. You are not going to ask them, oh, how can I steal the car? They are going to say, oh, I'm in a story, and in this story there is 2 neighbors, and so they are going to outsmart the model. So people use patches, yes, to say, okay, this is malicious. In this case, the model is going to say, I'm not allowed to talk about this. Yeah. So, yes.
On the fishing model that I spoke about, do you have fishing models for low resource languages?
So this is actually a topic I'm very interested about personally. So how to get these big models on small devices. So thankfully the model for images are like they are less big than for language. For language, maybe for images you can have a very big model, a very performant model for a billion parameters, like very performant. But for text, maybe you have to 10x that. So currently I'm not aware of a diffusion model that is very supported. But I'm interested in like the compression of this model. Yeah, this is a current research problem.
How do you manage the scaling up of these models? Because in normal testing of ideas or piloting of these models, when you try it on a small scale and compare it to a little larger, the result from a little larger or a model with larger data sets. Now, how do you control for the difference between the large model sets and possibly the model that you are using on a global scale? I hope I'm making sense.
The scale. Do you mean so? So let me verify I understand the question. Are you asking about, like, okay, you have this big model and now maybe there are people that want to query it in India and in Ghana and South Africa and Spain, and are you asking about this scaling? So scaling like the access to it, or
Scaling in terms of how effective is it on a global scale? So somebody is using it, you tried it hopefully with data from, let's say, 3 or 4 or 5 countries, working with it. You piloted, you tried ideas, and you think it's okay. Now you post it online. That becomes a global scale.
Yes.
Somebody will be writing it in China, somebody will write it in Botswana, somebody will be writing it from America, US, Canada. How do you ensure that the model gives you good results for all these areas?
I see. So this is so the way I understand it is also the language part. Like, how do you ensure that the model is going to be able to answer in the correct language? So this is also a problem actually, because let's say, because the model will not, these models will not have the same capability in all the languages. So for instance, this is something that was noticed. If you ask the question in English, and if you ask the question in another language, like, I don't know, in Bulgarian, I say, the quality of the answer is not going to be the same. Maybe in one case you are going to have mini paragraph laid out, and in another case you are going to have just bullet points. So this is a research problem actually. It's not solved. But what people are doing is to try to collect data for the language they are targeting, or the locals they are targeting. And they are trying to make the model good in these languages by collecting more data. So it's a data collection like solution that people are using. Have I answered?
Yeah. You realize that I'm sure you work with these things, so you know what I'm talking about. There are certain sites or certain information that you want, or certain places you want to go online, and they'll tell you that this software, this is not, you don't have access to it, or it's not allowed in your location.
Oh, I see, yes.
How does that operate with AI models?
Oh, I think that when you say operate, because so I think that this kind of restriction are made by the organization that run these models. So maybe if you store and you connect to another country, you're going to have access. But so it's the organization who will decide, oh, maybe we are not deploying it in this country yet because we want to prepare the model to be ready in that country. So this is more an organization decision than, yes.
So what you are saying is that with some AI models, those restrictions may be there. I want to be sure that whether those things are there and whether we should be concerned with such information. Because as a researcher, when information comes, we always try to contextualize it in our context. And we always try to triangulate it with what happens in the international front. I don't know if I'm making sense. Yes, so in the process of doing all those things, you want to understand whether your information is in relation to your context or is possibly not, that does not include your context.
So this is also a very actual question. So when you say contextualizing, yeah, so we have a way to also talk about this. We often talk about localizing the information. So a typical example is, I don't know, let's say that you have access to the model and you want a story. So tell me a story about a character that is going to school and has a great grade. So depending on the country you are in, the name of the character is going to change. So maybe if you are in Ghana, the character can be called Coffee, for instance. Maybe if you are in, like, I don't know, in an English country world, it would be James. So these are not easy to do, but this is something people are working on, how to contextualize the information that the model is going to give. And this is work in progress. This is an active area of research currently, like how to make it more, how to make it so that the information is going, even in terms of, let's say you ask a question about politics, how to make it so that the model is going to answer questions, like information that are very relevant for your local, like perspective. So this is something that we are working on, and that is also a very exciting field of research. So it's work in progress, I would say. Yes, I have not answered.
Oh, it's okay. I think you've answered my question.
Yes. Come again? Multimodal, you want to know?
I want to know how the visualization is done. Are you going to use data sets?
Am I going? I would use data set for
The visualization outputs.
Okay, so interesting question. So actually, a way to think about these models is in terms of modality of input, modality of output. So for instance, a typical large language model is a text-to-text model. But then you have, for instance, this one is an image and text-to-text model. Because you can see, so it's a model that can see and that can read and that can write to you. But now there are also models that are image and text and image. So this is, for instance, the diffusion models. So no, they are text to image because you ask it, Prof, give me an image of this, and they give you an image. So based on the kind of model you are interested in, you are going to provide it like image, and so it depends on what you want to do specifically. But now, if you are interested in that, most likely you can find model online. So I would suggest to go to Hugging Face. Hugging Face is like you have a large library of model at your disposal, and yes, so you can download one of these models and then use them for inference. For instance, personally, I've been playing around the diffusion models. So I downloaded it in my computer and I just ask them to generate me images. Yes, so yeah, you can mess up with this model. They are available.
All right, thank you very much. Another question?
So let's take the two questions. I'll try to answer them. So yes, please.
With the issue of, let's say, if you train a model, let's say you are training a model on, let's say, a data set. For example, with the Bengali issue, training a model in English, then it develops a capability in Bengali. Is there a possibility that you might be training a model in, let's say, maybe neuroscience, then the model would automatically develop capabilities in, let's say, maybe cardiology or something?
Oh, I see what you're asking. So, yes. So I think the question is, so if I reformulate is, okay, can you train the model on neuroscience data and expect it to have also emergent capabilities for cardiology, for instance? Is it your question? Yes. So I haven't seen that yet. Maybe, maybe you can try. And,
so that means there are issues where maybe researchers don't really understand the capabilities of the model they are being trained.
Yeah. So this is something maybe I can try to find and share. There was a very interesting paper about these emergent capabilities. So what they've shown is that as as we scale the size, the capabilities, like they are not really emergent. So what they argue is that it's just that we measure these capabilities with test and with percentage. Okay, now the model is able to have increased like a large performance at this benchmark. But the thing is that as we scale, the performance has been increasing steadily until a point where it is now it is now like it has a wow effect. So we see this kind of wow effect after a certain threshold. But below this threshold, we don't notice that the model is improving. So my personal opinion is that like these fields are very technical, very they are very high impact in the sense that they can touch on the life of individual. So even if you like by training you improve the model understanding of neurology and cardiology, people are not going to trust them like on the spot. They are going to have a very heavy training and safety like bounding around to make sure that they are not going to get off the script, or if they go off the script, they are going to be safe. So yes, people are not going to rely on the emergent capability in such high impact fields. Like this would be my answer.
Oh, thank you. I want to look at the local practicality of such a thing. I set a platform for farmers to come and sell their produce to the university. That's what I do. I call it farmers market. Anytime the university community sees me in the market, they knew that I'm bringing farmers to come and sell quality, safe products and fresh products. For the farmers, I am a source of assurance to the consuming public. But for the farmers, it is only once or 2 times that I visit them when they are producing. So when they bring it here, they are telling me now it is this particular variety, or it is this particular like organic, or it's a conventional, or like it is a local rice or a foreign rice. I also just see it in my eye and I have agreed. So we have conducted a study using the NIR, which gave us the image to be able to separate them. With what we are doing now, I can see the possibility of engaging in such modeling that we can just use the model, not necessarily relying on other tools, but maybe the pictures or whatever we just take in the market, send it to that model, and it should be able to give us a result that will be valid and reliable, so that when Dr. Moore comes to my market, he tells me that, oh, he wants to buy a local rice, I can pinpoint that this particular one with assurance it is a local rice. Is it possible?
Yeah, so I think that there might be people working on that. So I'm aware of a data set that is crop prediction. So basically what they do is that they want to identify if the crops are healthy or not. So it's kind of, they use boundary boxes around the crop, and based on that they are able to say it's healthy or not. And I'm also aware of a startup in South Africa that uses drone to find when the fruits are ready to be taken.
We also have that as well. We also use the drone to even predict the yield and then the yield gap, so that we prepare towards how much we'll be able to estimate. We tried it in a particular crop, okra, but the results in terms of the predictability, as you are saying, it's not too good, so we are a bit quiet on it. So I was thinking that what we are talking about now, we also have the possibility of trying to do these things so that You know, if you are using the drones, it crashes, you have to get another one. Yeah. But this particular one, just training the pictures for them to be able to give you, and that will also help. That's why I'm also finding the practicality of this particular one in that aspect.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think that it could be very helpful to have this kind of application. So yeah, thank you for sharing it. Yes, it's very interesting.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, Jean. Yeah, so there's actually, I think this is there's plan A. So plan A is being found out by stack campus, right? And what you are doing is crop and division for our 18 folks in Ghana. So I'm providing some assistance model development and stuff. I mean, usually I think when people say something about models, you keep hearing he's talking about models. Someone will be wondering, okay, what is this model that you are talking about? It's quite unfortunate. Maybe most people have not really had a first-hand experience of these models. So if you tell them the model, you show them the pictures, it looks fanciful, but the connection is not there. But there are several models. So for every type of problem you want to solve, we have specific neural network architectures that handle them. So if you want to do languages, we have the NLP models. So you can just check NLP, and they are already existing models. Sometimes, even if it doesn't exist, you can take transfer learning, take already existing ones, try to inculcate them, use them, and use them to develop your data sets, what you have with you. So maybe in the second half, before we start, I'll try to give a brief description of artificial intelligence. Some of the artificial intelligence is for prediction, some of them are for classification. So not everything is doing the same thing. Some of them they use to forecast events, like weather forecasting. It's predicting the future. And some of them is to classify things like this is a computer, this is a projector, this is a laptop. It will classify or segment them and give you this information for you to use. So there are many types of things that the AI does. It's not really one thing, it does many things. And he's talking about text, speech, pictures, and if you go to the internet and you do diffusion models, people are creating books. People are writing their own books just using diffusion model. Because all you have to do is go there, put in something, an African king with a Shakawali, something, and then it will give you an African king in Egypt or something, a crown, a picture that you can use for your story lines. You can use for your story, you can write the whole story out of it. If you want to ChatGPT, people sometimes are worried, should we use ChatGPT to answer questions and stuff? And I tell them, you should think of the calculator, right? In 1984, when the calculator was there, many teachers did not like it. They fought against it. They tried that it was going to disturb education process. Nobody really wanted a calculator around because the idea was it is not going to help students to think faster or to think well in mathematics. But nowadays, nobody even thinks about because there are certain things that are just robotic. 2 plus 2. You don't have to think too much. You need to use your brains for the analysis and other serious stuff, not to do the robotic stuff. So this is what the ChatGPT is now doing. That there are things that it can help you improve your knowledge on. If you don't know something, it doesn't mean it's 100% correct. But if you don't know something, you can just go there and start and ask. Sometimes if I'm asking students questions for the exams, I just go there and I put there the question, and I said, how will you do this one? And then it gives me several ideas on how the question is going to be solved or how it can be solved. And then if I pose it to the students, I try to see, okay, how are they thinking also the same way. So these are tools that enhance you to learn. If your teacher asks you questions you don't understand,
You go to ChatGPT, you put it there, it gives you an idea of the solution. Maybe sometimes even it gives you the solution. So you use it to learn. It's not foolproof, so it may give you rubbish as well. Sometimes it gives you rubbish. Rubbish means it doesn't know what it's telling you, but it is still telling you something. So that's rubbish. So it means that sometimes it is not giving you the truth, but sometimes it is also giving you the truth. You use it in a way that will enhance your education. So you put it there, you read the information, you check, is it correct or it's not wrong, it's not correct. And then it helps you build your knowledge in that sense. So these are a lot of tools that exist. So hopefully we'll have a break now for about an hour, and then we'll continue with the next session. So in the next session, we're going to see some of the things Jason spoke about that is being done here in Ghana, forecasting and stuff like that, or flood situations. Because if you can segment all the buildings in Ghana, it helps you do a lot of things. So they're going to talk about it, and then also they will talk finally about how to engage, or how to be, if you want to do an internship at Google Ghana, for instance, what do you need? You cannot just apply and I want to come and do an internship there, because they will not have the space for you. They need you to come with some skills. So if you go there, it's not like the normal internship places where they say go and buy food and stuff. So you go there, you are given a job, you are given a task, and then you must do it within the period that you are there. You are given some tasks. What are the tools you need? What do you need to have as, okay, Google, I'm going to do an internship, then I apply. They say, okay, let's see what you can do. You say, I can do this, I can do this, I can do that. And they say, okay, come, we'll give you some internship opportunity. So the second phase, that's what they will talk about. So I hope a lot more people will be here as well to listen and to learn about some of the things that are happening. They're also going to talk about what they are doing, some of the projects they are ongoing here. And this will already give you an idea of how to train yourself to be engaged in the future with a company like Google. So thank you very much. We'll take a break, and then we'll come back again at about 1:30 to continue. So, but before that, we'll take some pictures. So all of us will come here, as many as can fit. We'll take some pictures with the team as well. And then after we go for a break. Thank you very much.
Okay, ready.
case study from the work in this international part. So I'm part of the flood forecasting initiative, and our job or our goal is to allow. So for this presentation, I'm going to first introduce the flood forecasting initiative, and then I'll talk about our goal, and then two of the models we've developed, and I'll take questions from the crowd. So to introduce the flood forecasting initiative, we were started because as Google, we recognize that flooding is one of the most common natural disasters in the world. It's more common than earthquakes, it's more common than wildfires, and it affects billions of people across the world every year. So we thought it would be useful to develop a way for us to detect these flood phenomena. Just so that you know, this is what a flood looks like. When we're talking about floods in this initiative, we're talking about river rain floods, which is when the river bursts its banks because of rain, precipitation, and other normal phenomena. We don't cover floods like flash floods, and we don't cover floods caused by man-made interventions like opening a dam. So our goal was to create accurate and actionable alerts covering areas affected by floods. We started off with a small pilot in Bangladesh, and then we spread it throughout the world. Why did we decide to take on this project? So as Google, we have enough of a public presence for us to be trusted. We also have the computational resource and access to the information that would give us the ability to generate flood forecasts. And we're able to scale, and we have a bunch of machine learning experts that can convert the problem of what is a flood into something that's actionable for people to understand. Another reason is because we also have a good relationship with governments and research institutions, and we have the operational and organizational expertise, or we can make partnerships with such people globally. So what do we mean when, what do I mean when I say people rely on us or can trust our information? I think Google is basically a household name globally, so maybe in China, but globally, elsewhere. And if you have a question, where do you go first? Google, yes. Unless you go to your parents first. Maybe they'll go to Google afterwards. So we wanted to rely on that and give useful information about floods to the world as well. So how did we get here? We started off with a small program in India and Bangladesh. These are two very heavily impacted areas in terms of floods. In India, there's what we call the monsoon season that happens every year. And these floods are devastating and take out whole regions. Their scale varies from year to year. And so it would be helpful to have a sense of what kind of flood we're going to have this year. And that's what we tried to achieve with this initiative. Since then, we've scaled to over 80 countries in the world, and we're covering a population of around just over 460 million people. And we give alerts and interventions globally. These are some of the areas that are covered both by floods and some of our other teams, including wildfires and earthquakes. So
to understand what we mean by AI model, first let's look at what we're going to try and do. So we know that we want to make the information accessible and available. So the way we make the information accessible is by showing it on maps, showing it in search, and giving Android notification in participating countries. And this allows people to at least get an alert if there is going to be a flood or understand how the flood is going to affect them. We also have another product called Flood Hub, which shows where we think there's going to be flooding in various parts of the world, and also shows the extent of the flooding with a nice graphic that shows if we think the flood is going to be dangerous, or when we're going to warn people about if this flood is dangerous or not. Can anyone think about one problem with that we would have faced with this kind of graphic? Or in this project in general? So how do we know a flood is going to be dangerous if we're not there? So how does a person like me, standing here in Ghana, know that a flood over there in Sweden is going to be dangerous if I'm not by the river? And no one's told me. I can't know. This is a case of unlabeled data. We know that the river level is there, but we don't know if that's dangerous or not. So we have the data, but it's not labeled as dangerous or a warning level or something like that. And so this is a good case of unlabeled data that we use to train the model. Okay, now let's talk about the model. So we have two models in this initiative. The first one is the hydrological model. And for those of you who did geography, you know that hydrology, or the hydrologic cycle, hydrology is the study of the hydrologic cycle, which includes aspects like precipitation, snowmelt, percolation, evapotranspiration. We're just trying to model how water behaves so that we know how much water is available both inside of the soil, so how much groundwater there is, and how much water is going to be inside of the river. The reason we need to know this is because obviously a flood is when the river bursts its banks, so we need to know when that will occur. Now, in the past, we used the geological method, which involved a whole bunch of different theories about hydrology, thermodynamics, convection, some physical processes that would model. If I were to simplify this, it would be like if I came to you today and I asked, do you guys think it's going to be hot or colder tonight? Is it going to be colder than it is now at night? Yes or no? Yes. Raise your hand if you think it's going to be colder at night than it is now. How do you know that? Because you know it gets colder during the day. So in your head, you have some sort of formula that says in the daytime it's going to be hotter because of the sun, in the nighttime it's going to be colder because there's no sun. So this is kind of summarizing that with a bunch of different formulas and with a bunch of other information. I'll give you another example just now that will work a bit better. So who knows the boiling point of water? When does water boil? At what temperature does water boil? Are you sure? How sure are you? Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you that you're only half right. At atmospheric pressure, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. But if I change the pressure, then it'll boil at a different temperature, correct? So with more information, which are more parameters, I can give you more accurate information. And that's what a model tries to do. It tries to look at other inputs and tell you, okay, because I know this and this is the answer. And that's what we try to do with our model. But we use our model uses a bit more information than that. So imagine you're trying to boil water and you want to know how long it's going to take to boil. And the only information you have is the temperature of the water right now. So if I know that if the temperature is if I know that it's at 20 degrees Celsius right now, and I'm trying to get it to boil, and I ask you how long it's going to take to boil, you don't know, unless you have the information about how hot the heating source is, right? So if you don't have the information, but you know that a few minutes earlier it was at 10 degrees Celsius, you can kind of come up with a function that maps the two. So that's what we try to do with our model. So our model uses something called an LSTM, which takes information from the past about the river and looks at what's happening now in the river and what's happened in the past in the river, and then tries to make a prediction on whether or not there's going to be a flood or not. Now, the output of our model would be water level, but water level isn't necessarily correlated to whether there's going to be a flood or not. So there's a bit more information that we need. So this is a graph that shows the performance of our model against other models that have been developed. Actually, this one shows other models. These are the benchmarks we're comparing against. So this is other people's work. You can see that over there, the cumulative density is our parameter that we're varying. Basically, what we want is for that. What we want is to bring that curve closer to the end. So the closer it is to the edge, the better the model is performing. So these are some of. So with that in mind, if we look at all of these models, which one's performing the best out of all of them? It's the solid orange one at the bottom. And that's our model with the LSTM. So using the AI model worked far better than using this previous model that used all of the maths and all of the physics that described the world. Why is that though? Anyone? Okay, so it's kind of like the question I asked you just now about when will water boil? We know that it boils at 100 degrees at atmospheric pressure. So when these other models are being developed, they're being developed kind of in a vacuum. But our model, our AI models have, just like before my colleague was saying, our models have a bit more information. So it's been trained on a few more locations, which is the same as training in another language. So it can see some nuances that we wouldn't necessarily be able to see if we were only training in one place or at one pressure. So this is the model that shows. So over here it's labeled observations, which is what actually happened, and then our model's predictions, which is what's in the darker blue, and then the uncertainty range of our model, and where we put the warning and danger levels. So you can see that our model performs really well because it's very close to the actual observations on this graph. So if our model says that the water is going to be at this level, we can see that it's going to be very close to that level with a very small uncertainty. And that's how we know that the model performs well. This is the model again on. So before we were looking at a 36-hour forecast. Now we're looking at a 48-hour forecast, and we can see that compared to existing methods, which is the pink line, our model performs much better. It very closely tracks the observations. Okay. So when we say we're developing a model that does forecasting, we're trying to develop a model that will answer your question, what will the water level be at this time, before that time, and then we test it against what the actual water level was at that time afterwards. So does everyone understand what this graph means? Okay. So what data do we have? We have observations. When I say an observation, I mean there's one of these gauges, which is this is a stream gauge. It's a tool that's used by hydrologists to measure the water level of a river. So they come, they look at that instrument, and they see that the water level is at that level, and they say, okay, the water level is at 2 meters on that day. This data is collected at different rates throughout the world. Our model runs hourly on the data that's available, and it monitors, then evaluates itself against the true observation from its past prediction. Okay. So that's what the hydrological model tries to do. It tries to guess or tries to predict the level of the river at a certain point in the future, and then it gives itself a score based on what the actual level will be later on. And the next model, which will tell us the extent of a flood, is something called the inundation model. Now, I was saying earlier that just because you have the water level, you don't know how much of the river basins, how much the river is going to overflow its banks. For that, we use something called inundation, which tries to say, okay, with this much with this level of water, the river's banks will be overflown by this amount, and so this area will be flooded by that amount. So on our goal or our challenge is we don't always have map elevation because we're looking down at the Earth from a satellite. So it becomes challenging to say, okay, this level is correlated to this amount of overflow. And something else that challenges, that's a bit more of a challenge, is the fact that for those of us who did geography, we know that rivers are unique animals or unique geological features in the sense that they're not static, they change every few years. So even though we have a river level at this point, because the river has changed its morphology, it might correlate to a different amount of area being overflowed than before. So the inundation AI model has the benefit of understanding that this is a very dynamic river feature, whereas hydrologists would have to go and check what was happening there with the river. Our model can guess, okay, so I see the satellite imagery, I know that the river is now doing this, so I think from where it is now and how it behaved previously, that this new area is going to be overflown. Okay, so it takes river discharge, which is the amount of water flowing into the river, and river level as inputs, and it tries to output how much the river is going to overflow its banks or the extent of the flood. So now I've covered how we get our inputs, some of them. I've skipped over inputs like weather data and other inputs that would be missing and important. And then I've told you how the hydrologic model works. And then I've told you how the hydraulic model works. So now with these models, we have all of this information, but we still have to present it in a form that the user can understand. And that's where our last team comes in, where we launch it on search, we launch it on maps, and we launch it as smartphone notifications. To do that, we need to first understand who's looking for what information people are looking for. So in Ghana, for instance, you might want to know the water level, whereas in India, they might want to know where the water is going to reach in terms of body height, because that's more important to them when they're dealing with the floods versus the water level, the exact water level. And then we have these inundation maps that will show more or less which areas we think are going to be flooded in a certain basin. And we show you this so that you know, okay, if I'm in this region, this is a red alert region, maybe I should move to a different region. And then in the selected countries, we also have smartphone notifications that go out the moment we realize that there's going to be a severe flood in your area. Okay. Are there any questions about the AI model or this case study or other case studies? Yes.
Does your model consider education needs, how the soil text, how the soil is able to be water for
Okay, so the question is, does the model consider infiltration and other soil dynamics? So I know I skipped over a lot of the inputs that we use for the model, but yes, the short answer is yes. We look at surface flow, we look at absorption rate, we look at percolation rates, where the data is available. In some countries, we don't have access to this information, but what we've noticed is, or what is possible, is that in some places we train where we have this information, and then the model starts to understand that, okay, a basin that looks like this has this kind of absorption characteristics, these kinds of percolation characteristics, and when it sees a similar basin in another place, it can then say, I don't have that information, but a similar basin had this kind of absorption rate, so this is how I think it's going to react now. Does that answer your question? So where we have the data, we do use it. Where we don't have the data, we rely on the model itself to infer these characteristics. Yes.
So you train your models on particular water bodies. Maybe you are training it on river crab to look at the extent to which that river would overflow back, or you train it generally, as in all rivers in Ghana or all rivers across the world, how they will behave, depending on the data you collect.
So this is a question about how the model is trained, about which data, which rivers we train it on. Correct? Yes. So but in this training, some rivers work better than others because understands rivers of a certain type, where it understands the river enough that we're confident that the alerts are okay, we release those places. Where it doesn't understand the rivers that much, we ask ourselves, why doesn't it understand this river? And then we fine tune it further. We train it more on that river so that it understands it better.
When you say understand, you mean you don't have adequate data pertaining to the behavior of that river?
Yes. So one of the major problems we have in Africa is there was another slide here where it shows the correlation between GDP and the quality of the data that you have in that region. So that would show that many African countries don't have high quality data that we can use in training. So even though I don't remember why I showed this gauge. Yeah, even though I showed a stream gauge like this is actually a legacy stream gauge. This requires somebody to go out and look at the gauge. And if that person decides, I'm taking lunch today, you don't get that data. In other places, like the United States, the more automated gauges that will they just work automatically. No person has to physically go and look at that gauge. But obviously a gauge like that is more expensive, and so you'd get better quality from that gauge than this gauge. Yes?
How is the model calibrated?
The model.
The model.
This model. How is it
calibrated?
Calibrated to a country or trained in general?
Yes, a specific country.
How's it fine-tuned? Okay. So let's say I want to fine-tune it to the Volta region, the Volta River here in Ghana. I would go to the experts on the river and I'll ask them, do you have data about the past events on the river? If they don't, then I have to go and find a data source that has that information. If they do, then we feed the data to the model. It then starts to understand better, okay, I thought that this river would have a level like this, but the ground truth data that I have says that the level should be this on this specific region, this specific river. Then it calibrates itself until it trains itself until it can give out that level on that river. Does that answer your question? So ideally, we need a data source for the river. If we don't have that, then we rely on it to understand it based on the other information it has on other rivers that are similar to this river.
So the model deals with uncertainty.
Yes. So in this graph, I've shown the uncertainty. It's a very light color, so I'm not sure you can see it. So in this part of over here, there's very high uncertainty, and you can see that the model slightly overestimates how much water there will be. And then in this region, there's very little uncertainty, and it's very close to the actual observation. So everyone's happy. Everyone understands what a model does now. Think of it as a mathematical formula that doesn't take numbers, it takes data and tries to predict something or give you an answer based on that data. Yes?
Please, does your model regularly encounter problems like overfitting?
So our model is a forecasting model. So overfitting isn't necessarily a problem with forecasting models, but I want to say yes, but it's not overfitting in the way that you think of it. it's overfitting in the sense that it's trying to, it keeps on saying 100 degrees Celsius, even though I've told it I've changed the pressure. It's overfitting in that sense. It's stuck on an answer, not this, even though I've updated the parameter. Yes.
You said the example you gave concerning the water river.
Yes.
You said if they have past data about the river, that's what we pick. And then you also gave another example where if someone was supposed to go and take their lunch, they wouldn't went to the data. And also we know human beings make mistakes in collecting data. So I want to know if your model has a way of verifying the accuracy of the data it gets, so that it doesn't end up giving us wrong predictions about La Nina, the weather forecasting.
This one's a bit of a difficult one. So, past data that has errors in it is past data that has errors in it, right? But the way the model trains itself is it doesn't just look at the past. It also looks at the future. So if it says, oh, the data says this, but the past data says this, the present observation says this, and my forecast says this. If the forecast and the observation agree, then it can disregard the past data. It doesn't. It just flags the past data, and then we have to go and analyze how accurate it is. So in the end, we want the forecast to agree with the observation that we're seeing in the future. Yes. As far as possible, we try to take rainfall into account where we have the data. So this graph shows, where we have the data, yes, we do consider it. Where we don't have the data, it becomes challenging, but there are ways of getting approximations of the data. So if those are all the questions, I think my time has elapsed. Thank you very much. Please check out go/FloodHub for more information. And if you want to play with these models, a lot of the information that I've talked about is already published with open source code that you can find at Neurohydrology. And yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Is MohamedElfatih, and I will talk today about the research residency program and the interview process and how can you prepare for it. So the agenda for today will consist of two main parts. First, I will give a brief introduction about this research residency program. We talk about some examples of some projects. I might give you some projects that maybe we can talk about earlier. And in the second part, I will talk about the interview process and how can we prepare for it. So we can start. So the research residency program is a 1 year program that is offered by Google for everyone that will have a background in computer science or any related field to machine learning and artificial intelligence. And the goal here is to allow them to have the chance to apply their knowledge in software engineering and machine learning to contribute execute or to build the project. And during that time, you will have the support from all Googlers around the world. And I got here a photo of the Google office in Accra. This is showing us. Okay, now we talk about some of the projects that we are working on. Earlier, Jason talked about a project called Mega, and here give more details. Given a satellite imagery, the goal is to detect the building footprint. And what I mean by the footprint is the outline of the building and the road and those stuff. This kind of information is very important to estimate the population and potentially will be used by humanitarian organization and government to plan events such as vaccination and other kind of events. The second project that I'm working, and basically I'm working on it, it's called Sky. And here is the goal is to generate an assessment. Okay, can I just stop this? It's like it's something. Okay. So the goal here is to given suppose that a disaster hit a country or city, such as earthquake or flood. The goal is to give us an estimate of how bad the disaster is. And this information will be used by government also to plan resources and help. Basically, you see here an imagery of before the disaster. I'm not sure if you can see or not. And if this is the image of the disaster, you can see the building totally destroyed in the red dot. Yeah, the put also I think for the project down in the slide if you want to read more about it. Also, the last thing that I want to talk about this program, the benefit. During this time, as I said, you will have access to many researchers from all around the world. So it will be a good time to build your skill, build your connection. We organize a lot of fun activities. This is a photo of a recent trip to a beach called Sankofa. And yeah, here we are trying to find who has the highest jump. The last thing you get is, yeah, basically my favorite is you get the people. Before I go to the interview process, anyone have a question about this research residency program or in general?
Thank you. In your presentation, you said that for someone to be part of the team, the person should have computer science background.
Yes, because potentially you will be interviewed in those machine learning, software engineering, so you have these skills before you apply to this kind of program.
So what if someone takes a course outside like academic program? Maybe he got training outside the classroom and just institutions in it. Is it possible to apply that?
Possibly, if you could showcase that you have projects that you worked on that are related, and if you may also to pass the interview, you will get it. There's no problem. Okay, if there's no question, I will go directly to the interview process. Mainly there are two stages, coding interview and research interview. And first I'll just give you an overview of it. The goal of the coding interview is just to give you a simple coding exercise and to assess your knowledge of using data structure. For example, like, can you write me a Python code that will find the minimum value at least? So it will not be that easy, but this is a simple example. The second part will be like a discussion about past experience, whether you have related courses in machine learning, and do you have the foundation knowledge in those areas. And the goal to prepare, of course, to boost your confidence. Then this will increase your chance of success. And the process is simple, but it's still competitive. You need to realize that you need to perform that at your best. Okay. Okay, so let's start first with how to prepare for the coding interview. And basically, the purpose of the said earlier, they want to know, do you have the technical knowledge or not? And so the evaluation criteria will be algorithm, whether you write a clean code or not, and the way you think. And to prepare for such kind of interview, first you need to have the required technical knowledge. Then you need to have specific solving strategy. And finally, you need just to keep practice. I will go through each one of those more detail. So for the technical knowledge, I mean here you have two main areas that you need to understand very well. The first one is called data structure, and it's basically about how do you organize your data. So there are different ways to organize your data, and it's it depends heavily on the kind of application that you want to use it for. For example, there's a popular data structure called the binary tree. You need to understand what the binary tree is. Maybe we'll use it during the interview. Also, there's different kind of data structure called linked list. The second part is you need to also have to understand what is algorithm, and you can understand the popular one. For example, merge sort, binary search, and also you need to understand how can you know the time complexity and space complexity of the algorithm. And I put a source for resources so that you can. This is a very good resource from Princeton University. I highly recommend it. It's highly recommended. So it's explains both of them in more detail, and it will take a long time, but it's a good investment. The second resource is a textbook called Algorithm. It's very popular. It's very big. You can just take it as a reference. It's impossible to go through all of it. Okay. Now that you have the technical knowledge, you need to have specific solving strategy. So, if you are given a question, you don't directly start solving. This is the wrong way. First, you need to make sure that you understand the problem. This is the first thing that you need to do in the interview. And by that I mean you need to ask clarifying question about the problem itself. And also as a good tip, always ask about a simple example about the problem. So for example, if they ask you like write the program to find the minimum maybe in a list of integers, you can take a small list and go through it. Okay, so now after you understand the problem, do you write code? No. Still you need to do a second thing. You need to talk about the algorithm that you use. For example, okay, I will write a for loop, we go through each item and then keep the minimum as I go. You should tell that to the interviewer. Sometimes the goal of this is that sometimes you might get the wrong algorithm or might get the wrong idea. And when you talk about it to the interviewer, he can guide you in the right way. And always also the good thing, always start with the simple solution or naive solution. After that, you can maybe start writing code. It doesn't need to be working. You can just start with the simple code, and as you go, you can convert it to any code, even the language that you are using. Finally, when you finish writing the code, the last step you need to okay, I finished writing the code. Let's test it. If you did that, you will for sure get more better evaluation. You can take like a simple example and verify that your code is getting the right output. The last step, basically, sometimes you are at the end, you will be asked to analyze the time and space complexity, but sometimes also the interviewer forget. If you just talk about it, this also is a good thing. Okay. So right now, you know the technical, you have the technical knowledge, you have a solving strategy, but the last thing you need to practice. And I put here here is a link to a website called Prof, and here you will find people who are ready to do an interview for you, and it's totally free. The second link is a popular website called Dube. It has a lot of past projects. The best way is to organize it in. I find this thing is very useful. Like list all your project, find the challenges, what you enjoyed in the project, what you did, the leadership in this project, what conflict, what is the value you get. You cannot find all of those, but try to fill it. This will take time, but it's a good investment if you want to. You will prepare very fast. You will. Like, if you want to study them for an interview, it will not take time. Also, when you've been asked a question about your project, like why do you use this method, what's this problem, you should answer your question in a structured way. There's actually a popular method called Sarr, and basically first you give a context about the problem that you are working on, then you give the action that you implemented, and then talk about the results. Finally, we give a bonus of some common question that is always asked. Sometimes they call you out to calculate it. For example, they ask you to tell me about yourself. And here basically just need your education and your past experience. This is also a popular question. Why do you want to join this company? You should also be prepared to answer this question. And the way to answer it, you need to understand the mission and the goal of the company. And finally, one of the popular questions is, what is your weakness? And here is the way to answer it, just to give brief weakness, and you can emphasize that you are working with groups. Okay. I guess this is the end. Thank you so much. Okay, this is the end. Thank you so much. Sorry for all this technical issues. So yeah, if there's any question or anything.
My question is, do you have a specific language that you use for the coding?
So in most cases, you will have the basically machine learning is running the or position machine learning also has the flexibility to use your language. And in my case, I also prefer to use Python. So yeah, you have the flexibility if you want to use C++, Python, C, Java, anything.
When you're mentioning where you should practice, you mentioned only code, and you did say it's sometimes good and bad. I want to understand why it's bad.
What's what?
When you mentioned the code, you said it's good and then bad at the same time.
It's bad because like it has 1,000 of problems, so you will just be lost if you don't know what's problem that you want to solve. And basically, you might find yourself just starting maybe one category, maybe just are solving problems that are related to speed. When you go to the interview, you ask a problem about maybe dynamic programming. So it's unlikely you pass the interview for sure. So that's why if you have an informative way of how to solve this problem, it will be the best thing. And one way is I gave a list of this blind 70. It covers many topics in data structure and algorithm, and there are also questions that are asked frequently. You will find them in the lead code. So you see the question in this list, go to lead code, solve it, and you'll be okay. Yes?
So, with the projects needed, is it machine learning projects or basic software development projects?
So, if the project is related to machine learning, it will be much better, for sure. So, and yeah, it's the best. The more closer to machine learning, the better it will be, and because if you have a project that is machine learning, you will be asked a question about machine learning, and the interviewer will know what question to ask you, and then he will have a better way to evaluate you. So yeah, it's better to have project machine learning.
You made mention that before someone can qualify for the interview process, the person has to get some basic knowledge in machine learning. But here comes the case that the level of your knowledge differs from the level of my knowledge. So I'd like to ask, with respect to the level of knowledge, do we have any, like, for example, if I have 50% knowledge on machine learning and someone is also having 20%, does that influence the interview process as to where I'm going to get the next?
For sure, it will influence. They will take the best of the motivation. So someone is not serious. But it depends on the kind of questions that you will be asking. So for sure, you will not ask about everything. If you just answer those, basic will not be very difficult. Just about basic concepts. If you manage to answer them, you will be okay. Yeah. Yes, please. Okay, that's a good question. So you don't need to know about basically what software you need exactly, or like web development or those stuff. You just need to make sure you understand the syntax of a language that you are using, and then data structure and algorithm is something that is agnostic to the language itself. Like Mersor can be written in Java, C++, Python, in everywhere. So that's a good. You don't need to learn a lot. You just need to understand the syntax and those concepts of that structure and algorithm. For your second part, you will not be given a data set or then you create a model and train on it. But for example, they can ask you like, can you write me an algorithm like the code for maybe one of the popular machine learning mathematics, k-nearest neighbor, for example. Even that is simple. He just needs a highlight, for example. He just needs like the steps of this algorithm. And sometimes also in this research part, you don't need even to write anything. You just a conversation between you and the interviewer. And most of the time. But it's not going to be missing time. Yeah. I must go to write a code for sure. I hope this answers the question. The practical one. In the research part or the coding part? In the research part or the coding part? What do you mean by practical? You said practical part, right? Okay, so I don't get the question honestly. You don't get the practical.
During the intake, we have you said we have the practical aspect where you are going to code. So that's what I'm actually asking. If the wait, are you going to give will you be given the data sets to work on it? Just normal code?
No, actually the coding interview is only safety method for DB. So it's just like a question in a document or a code back. You just need to write a coding that like nothing, not too much. Like you don't need to take a data set, you need to create a model. That's too much work.
So maybe someone from the audience there will benefit. Why would person start from?
What? Sorry?
Where should the person start from? Application process.
Yeah. So it's better first to have the skills. Make sure before you get the interview, you make sure that you are first you have the required coding skills. You solve as many questions as possible. Then also you need to have proper related project to machine learning and so stuff. And after that, actually, this also will help you to get the interview first, because you need to submit your education information, CV, which will include all your past projects and so stuff. So I guess the answer is first to start to build the skill. If you already have it, you can go direct to the application process. But if you're asking right now whether this program is open or not, currently right now it's open, but maybe for the next year. And also those knowledge of like how to prepare for this interview doesn't apply only just for this residency program. It also apply for internship and other stuff.
Okay, so my question is not really related to this part, but I kind of think I really want to ask. Okay, first of all, good day to everyone. I'm very excited about the Google Ghana seminar. I was wondering if Google offers internship to students, and if so, could you please explain to us the criteria or the application process if somebody wishes to come and intern at Google?
You mean the question is about what's the process to get an internship? What do you mean exactly?
The question is, does Google give internship to students? And how do they apply for such internship?
Yeah, for sure they give internship for students, but as Jason earlier said, we are supposed to have some interns this year, but because of the economic situation, it's closed. Basically, there's a website called MohamedKhair. You can find those basic economic situations. We don't have it, okay? But as said earlier, we are hoping for the best next year.
You say there are two people at Jerusalem. One has the technical know-how. They all have the equal qualification. One, when communicating with data, has the technical know-how. He goes more into details. And the second is able to communicate his data effectively, where he's able to make meaning to what he has. Which of them would you prefer to work with you, or which would you see is the best practice? Since, say I am able to explain the data into details, but when it comes to meaning, there's not much understanding to it. And the other is able to not go that detail, but is able to make meaning of what it shows.
Okay, so you mean in the research part?
All right, so thank you very much for participating. I think you all give your emails in case Google says that they are going to give me some souvenirs for you, we'll send it through the emails. But nonetheless, thank you very much for participation. So if you do not have a lot of knowledge in artificial intelligence, don't worry. I'm planning that before the year ends, we'll organize an AI seminar where to introduce some basic knowledge, basic skills, hands-on sessions for you to have a feel of, to tell yourself, I can do a model, I can create an AI model, right? And then that gives you the sense of you have achieved something in AI. So, if you have any questions, anything, projects bothering you, you can always send an email. I think I sent out an email, you have my address. You can reach out as well. At the end of this year, the university is going to start the School of Sustainable Engineering. It's going to be the first in UCC. One of the things that will be happening in the School of Sustainable Engineering is training people as well in neural network, machine learning, Python programming, and stuff, which is really very good. And I also try to tell people the data that you get from the school, or the data given to you, you can use it as well. There's free YouTube lessons for you. You can go and learn machine learning on YouTube. Nonetheless, we also try to bridge out that gap by giving people some hands-on sessions as well. I feel the future really is a lot of people who will get this kind of knowledge and be able to implement it well. It is independent of where you are or apply for jobs in the job field. Currently, there are about more than 300,000 jobs in terms of machine learning, data science, hanging around the whole world, which is still looking for applicants. The Google website is not only the google.com. They have many of them, right? There's a Google Career, Google, many things. That the Google website is not just the .com. The .com is the search engine, but they have a lot of career development, free courses are all available on the Google website. If you can search, you get it, you benefit from it as well. So I'm hoping this will be the first of Google Ghana's visit to our university, and hopefully we'll have more visits as well, and to share and benefit from each other in the future as well. So thank you very much for coming, and all the best for your future, and I hope you can explore it well as well.
Yes, my name is Jean-Michel. I've started to work in Google in September this year. Before, I was a PhD student at Dube University in Senegal and Sorbonne University in France. And I'm conducting research on large language models.
So, what was your inspiration for this seminar, and were your expectations met?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk and to expose the university students to some of the trends in AI, and I was very happy to share it with them. And the session was very interactive. We had many questions, so the students were motivated to know more. And I liked how it went. It was very nice.
So, do you have any message for the students concerning Google?
Yeah, so maybe I would encourage them to be motivated and not to wait anyone to work on their skills, to try to have projects, to be self-driven, to try to find a professor to help them carry out their projects. So I give them all my encouragement, and the more motivated you are, the higher your likelihood of getting in this kind of companies.
What is your name, and what motivated you to join this seminar?
Oh, okay. My name is Gilbert. I'm a computer science student here. And then basically anything about Google interests me. I'm even using a Google phone. So anything about Google interests me. And then I want to start a career in AI, machine learning. So I think this seminar was the right step in my journey to begin in AI and machine learning. Yeah.
Dr. Stephen Moore from the Department of Mathematics at the University of Cape Coast.
So, what was the main motive for this seminar?
So, the main motive for this seminar is to bring Google Ghana here to UCC. If you want to start a friendship, you need to know each other. So you need to know the person, what he does, and what he's looking for. And this is exactly what this seminar is about. So Google has been in Ghana for about 11 years to 12 years. They have a research center for the last 5 years. They've been doing AI developments. Google has several centers all over the world. And each of the centers has a specialty, something they concentrate on. And the center here in Ghana has also a specialty, some projects they do. And so the idea is that today they come to present these projects to us and then also tell us, the university community, what tools are needed to participate in such a research, so that the students from our university, if they want to get internships at Google Ghana, for instance, or they want to get jobs at Google Ghana, for instance, they can plan for themselves and say, if I want to go and do some job at Google Ghana, this is the requisites or this is the skill set I need, so that if you apply that you want to go and do an internship, they see your application, they see what you can do, what you have done before, and then they can say, okay, we need this person, because the internship is 9 weeks. If they pick you, it's just 9 weeks. So they are not going to train you for you to then do something. You must go with a skill, and then they tell you, this is the project you are doing. You should take this part and do it. This is your intention part. And so once you get involved, immediately you are in the job world. You are in the working field, working environment. And it gives you all the things that will help you go into the job world when you are done with school.
Finally, a lot of students have the mindset that Google is all about the google.com, but then you made mention of a lot of services. Can you just let us know?
Yeah, so Google the google.com is a search engine. That's where you go and do your search. But Google has a lot of platforms and a lot of services. They offer free courses for people, or students, for people who want to develop themselves in terms of they offer free courses in machine learning, artificial intelligence, free courses in website development, free courses in software engineering. They offer so many free courses. Not only that, the website also offers, they have scholarships all around the world. They have a website also for job opportunities. All the offices all over the world in Google offices, all the jobs available, they advertise it there. And many other things that they offer there. So of course, YouTube is also from Google. YouTube also offers money for people who do advertisements, who create contents and stuff. So Google offers a lot, and this is the reason why, as a university, we need to have a collaboration, a partnership with them, so that we can also benefit from the resources they have and the offers they have, the scholarships, the fundings they provide. As a university, this is a good opportunity for us to get closer and benefit from them.
You tell me your name first and why you joined the seminar.
Okay, my name is Jessica, and I joined the seminar because recently I want to start learning about machine learning, and I've signed up for a certain course. I want to know more and learn about the trends in AI. So when I heard of the seminar, it's a good opportunity to come and learn more.
So has this seminar benefited you in any way?
Yes, it has developed my interest in AI, and now I would go forward in learning more about machine learning and AI.
So tell us your name.
I'm Alice Woodhampton.